All right, thanks, Chris. So for our first speaker, we have Ankita. She's joining us from Austin, Texas. Ankita's currently adulting in Austin, Texas, where she's known to learn how to survive the aggressive heat, increasing rent prices, and depending on the weather, she can be found outdoors hiking, biking, paddling, paddleboarding, and trying to pet other people's dogs or staying indoors reading a book. She has avid interest in all things design and Angular, and she's been a front-end engineer all of her adult working life, which is approximately either 10 years or 100 years because she's lost sense of time since the pandemic. Welcome, Ankita.
All right, so hello everyone. I am here to talk about finding hosts with magic of signals. And since signals were introduced in Angular version 16, they've become so ubiquitous. Like everything that signal touches seems magical. And they're everywhere. Almost every single thing. Oops. Okay. Almost every single thing that we used to do can be rewritten with signals, and it makes things so much better. And it just also makes so much sense. And I feel like signals just uh, came like a wave and took over Angular. And I mean, all these features on the slide, they're not actually in the chronological order of their release. It's just a representation of all the areas um, that Signals has already touched and enhanced. And these are all areas that have had such a high impact of performance of the application. The way we architect state management and the way we communicate between components, etc., etc. You name a thing, and Signals has touched it and made it beautiful. In the guide thing of Signals that they seem to have the magical touch of Midas, and a lot has been written and presented and talked about and discussed at length about all of these already. And I feel like you truly have to be deliberately living under a rock and ignoring all the buzz around Signals to not know about at least one of these features. There's definitely plenty of content out there about all of these topics. However, these are not the only areas in which Signal has amplified our developer experience about component authoring or just authoring the simplest things in Angular. And so I'm here to share one of the plethora of ways Signals makes Angular simple and easy to use and consume. The kind of things that tends to get neglected in the uh, grand scheme of things. Because naturally we tend to focus on the MVPs and overlook what other players bring to the field. I'm not even a sports person, but for some reason that's the only analogy my brain could come up with. Okay, so previously, if you wanted to conditionally apply a class to the host, but the condition wasn't just a Boolean value, you have to um, select it, you have to read the value of an observable and apply it to the class. Um, this is how you would do it. Like you would subscribe to the observable, and then using host binding, you would find the class on the host. And this is I have omitted all the other things that would be in the component because this is just not what the component is doing, right? Like the example that I have here is a very specific use case also maybe, but probably a common one. Like you want to read the value of the theme that needs to be applied because suppose for in your Angular application, you have multiple themes that a user can choose from, and you store the theme in like an apps setting reducer. So when a user selects a theme, you update the state of the reducer, and then you read the value of the theme, and then you subscribe to it, and then you bind to it. And obviously, like that's not the only thing that this component is doing. You'll have all these other variables and all these other things in the engine on it, and all the other life cycle methods and variables, just for the brevity, or just to display everything on the slide, just related to reading a value of an observable and binding it to the class. I just have the bare minimum. But you can see that it's quite verbose. And for example, if that's not the only class you want to apply, you want to apply a combination of what you read from an observable and a static value, then it gets even more verbose. You have a getter, you have like all these string concatenations and all the things that are going on. That seems quite hard to follow and understand what's even happening. Like you have to read through everything in the component, and your variable definitions, declarations are at one place, your lifecycle hooks are at some other place, and then your host listener, host binding, all of those things are at another place. And by the time you're scrolling through the component, you're like, what is happening? You know? However, now with the magic of signals, you can achieve the same in a very succinct manner. And this is what you have to do now. I feel like this feels like magic, doesn't it? Like it makes so much sense. Combine a signal value, you just read it from the store. Then if you select signal, that's a signal, and you just pass in the value. And the other example that I had previously, well, that's not what I meant to do. Let's go back. The other example that I had of like combining static values, you can just easily append it here and it still works. Like it's still just the one line, you're reading the value and just passing it to the host. And I know, I mean, this example might seem very specific, but like I said, I think it's really cool that Signal makes component authoring so much more simpler than what it used to be. Not just in number of lines. Like, sure, you can go just by the number of lines and like, oh yeah, less lines good and more lines bad. Like that's a separate thing. But still, just it seems way more logical. Do you have this all, like even reading it, it makes someone who might be new to Angular make more sense. And I think that's my favorite part about signals, that you don't even think of how powerful they are unless you start using things like these. I feel like now that I've been using signals, I'm starting to wonder how was I even living my life before they existed. And I have another example. Because you might be like, oh, like this is so specific that you're reading something from the store and you're using select signal or blah, blah, blah. However, and I'm hoping the font size works for this, but suppose you have a Boolean or some additional value or additional condition, excuse me, that you want to be passing into the host, like a toggle button or something that then changes the way that the component overall should, like changes some property or some class. You're applying additional class or styles to the host component. And that's a very general use case, right? You might have some presentational or design system components that you want to conditionally be applying or removing additional styles or classes from. And a lot of times, the way we handle it is that we pass in an input, and based on the input condition, we update the style of the component. So here, I just have this simple sample card component that takes in some condition, and I've hard coded it to false for now. But again, one of the cool features we have now is input signals. So if we were to read just one simple line of read it to an input and then pass or add a specific class based on that condition, this is all you have to do. Whereas previously, you would have, again, either have to use host binding or host, like have the, and like write the input declarator and the host binding declarator, and then have the Boolean condition defined here. Or have like, if you were just using host, you would have the class here, and then somewhere else in your component, you would have the condition using the input declarator defined separately. So I feel like this also, again, is a very simple thing, and it just makes so much more sense. And just to kind of show you an example, if you toggle the value and just adding something, oh, it's that good, it's not disappoint. Sometimes it does that where it's like, no, I'm not gonna. So yeah, what I was trying to do is just add an additional border just to make it very visible of how like some condition might change your host, that I'm just applying this border class that just a small change that you might want to apply to your host. So yeah, I feel like I just found this really cool thing that you could do with signals and wanted to share it. That's magic. That's me. Feel free to connect with me on any of those social medias that I have here for you.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful and really cool to see. Let's see if we have any questions. It looks like we have one question. Where do you see yourself using signals the most?
Oh, I think I've slowly started switching, like all my inputs are, instead of with using the input declarator, I've definitely been using the signal inputs. And instead of reading store as store.select, we've added the signals package and using select signal. And just having to not have to worry about using any sync pipe, or it's the little imports, remembering to then whether you're using the push pipe or async pipe or whatever. Just starting small for now, and it's so much more easier, less code to write and all of those other things. That it's really interesting to see how much more component authoring has become. So, and then we're also looking into again, I mean, I think I had this slide of all the, well, why do I keep doing that? This slide of all the different ways that signals have impacted Angular and all the different things that we have on it. So slowly switching to signal state, signal store, just for local state of a component, using signal store for it. And it's really, truly so much more easier to manage your state.
Great, thank you. And we have one more question. Do you have any recommendations on any general guidelines on how to move towards a signal-based Angular app at your workplace?
General recommendation is just to start gradually and not change everything just because it's the cool new thing. Start with something that seems more manageable. Start creating any of the new components that you are. Focus more on having them to be signal based instead of like ripping apart all the existing ones in your at your workplace, whatever, in your existing app. And then also noticing how maintainable it becomes. I think it's really helpful to come up with, even internally, we are starting to have these discussions, or like, what makes sense. And I think signals make it easy for you not to mess up things. It's really hard to mess up things if you're using signals. So just have a design doc, come up with a design doc at your workplace. So when and how to use signals, especially at the starting level, and not to overuse it, because that's also easy to do.